This class is called Music Theory for College Prep. My name is Amy Effler. I have my bachelor's degree from Westminster College in Music Education and my master's degree from LaSalle University in Special Education, specializing in differentiated instruction. I've also been a public school music teacher in Maryland for going on 10 years. College music theory is honestly a nightmare for the ill-prepared. I've seen grown men cry over it, but it doesn't have to be that way if we just rip off the Band-Aid and learn the basics before your freshman year. In fact, I think music theory is fun, and I'm not a mathy person at all. Music theory is fascinating if you stick with it. That being said, I highly recommend taking notes during the presentations to keep your mind from wandering. Let's start from the very beginning, a very good place to start. This is a staff. A staff consists of 5 lines. The first line is the line closest to the bottom of the page. Second line, third line, fourth line, and the 5th line is the one closest to the top of the page. It doesn't matter how many staves are on the page. We read them 5 at a time, with the exception of piano and organ music, but that's a whole other can of worms. We'll get there eventually. When you end a set of staff, you simply move on to the next, to line 2, and read the music written on this staff, and move on to line 3. It also doesn't matter if you play out of order. It doesn't have to be first line, second line, third line, fourth line, 5th line all the time. That would be super boring. Here's what I mean. You could potentially play a note on the 5th line, and then the 3rd line, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 3rd. That's a completely acceptable thing to do in music. What really matters is where it is on the staff vertically. We always read music left to right, just like reading a book. The same concept goes for spaces. There are 4 spaces on the staff as opposed to 5 lines. Like the lines, the higher the number, the higher the pitch. For example, 4th space is higher than 3rd space. See how that's higher on the page than that. And again, you can mix it up. Music notes, or pitches, are oval shapes symbols that are arranged on the lines and in the spaces on the staff. These are space notes. See how they are squished between the lines? It doesn't matter yet if the notes are filled in or left empty. It also doesn't matter if it has a stem. That's what this thing is called. For now, let's just worry about the vertical arrangement of the notes. These are line notes. Notice that half of the note is above the line and half is on the bottom of the line so that the line is impaling the note. Now we'll do your first of 3 checks for understanding. Get out a pen or pencil, paper, and straight edge such as a ruler or a book. Draw 1 staff extending the width of the paper. So you're going to draw 5 lines pretty close together. I'll give you 1 minute to do this. "20 seconds. Okay, hopefully you all are happy with your staffs. Working left to right, draw X's about 1 centimeter apart. Follow their directions below. First, put an X on the first space all the way to the left of the staff. 3rd line, 4th line, 4th space, 1st line, 2nd space, 3rd space, 5th line. I'll give you 1 minute. "30 seconds. Okay, time is up. We'll check to see if you are right later. Okay. Your textbook teaches to remember the lines by the slogan, "Every good boy does fine." But I prefer to teach with the slogan, "Every good bird does fly." You'll see why later. Notice that F is on the 5th line and the 1st space. This will happen for each and every note once we learn the other notes. This happens because there are only 7 letter names in all the music. A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and then it repeats back to A. But it's a higher A, but still an A. The F on the space is lower than the F on the 5th line. The piano keyboard is the simplest visual aid for the understanding of music theory. Left on the piano is the lower notes. Right is the higher notes. When face and every good bird does fly are placed together, it forms the musical alphabet starting on E and ending on F. See? Every good bird does fly, and our space slogan F-A-C-E spells face. Okay. On your staff that you drew, draw up arrows or down arrows according to the position of the next note. I'll give you 30 seconds to do this. Starting now. Okay. Yours should look something like this. Make sure it does. This is a treble clef. It is also known as the G clef. This is a bass clef. It is also known as the F clef. And every single musician got this image tattooed somewhere on the body in the early 2000s. This bothered me because the treble clef was upside down. I hope that no one in this class has this tattoo. If you do, I apologize and you do you. These instruments have something in common. They all read treble clef music. This is a clarinet, this is a trumpet, and that's a flute. If you are planning on going into music, that's probably not news to you, but they all read treble clef. Basically, they all read higher pitched music. And unlike the treble clef instrument, these bass clef instruments all read bass clef music. That's a cello, that's a tuba, that's a trombone, and that's a bassoon. Funny story, I was once teaching a 5th grade general music class, and we were going over the instruments, the orchestral instruments, and I asked the class what this instrument was, and one girl's guess was the baboon, like the ape. So she got S mixed up with B, baboon. Okay, I have some bad news now. Bass clef reads on a different system. The lines and spaces are still the same, but the slogans are different. There are 2 different slogans. Your textbook gives the slogan, "All cows eat grass," but I prefer to teach the slogan, "All cars eat gas." The slogans to remember the bass clef are either great big dogs fight animals, or as your textbook said, good boys do fine always. I prefer the great big dogs fight animals because good boys do fine always is too easily confused with every good boy does fine, one of the slogans for the treble clef lines. Here's a helpful visual of the notes on the bass clef from your textbook. Great big dogs fight animals, and all cars eat gas. And as you can see, it's in order. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. A, and next would be B. I found this image in John W. Schaum's Note Speller Book 1. Even though it's intended to help young children, I find it memorable for many different reasons. If you are new to or inexperienced in reading music, I suggest making flashcards or buying a set. The quicker you are able to recall the music notes, the less trouble you'll have in college music theory. Most people are competent in either treble clef or bass clef. Practice the one that's your weakness more frequently. And this is why I prefer to teach certain slogans. Treble clef deals with upness, if that's a word, and bass clef deals with downness. Every good bird does fly, and face is the upper part of the body. That's the upness. And dogs fight animals on the ground, and cars drive down on the highways. And to clarify, when I say staff, it is a synonym for clef. They're interchangeable. So staff means the same thing as clef. Observe how the curly part of the treble clef is wrapped around the second line. The second line is a G line. Remember, every good. Now observe how the two dots to the right of the bass clef are on either side of the left line. Great big dogs fight. That's why it's called the F clef. The next concept that I'm going to teach you about is called the grand staff. Sounds so fancy, doesn't it? Here's a picture of a blank grand staff. Notice that there is 2 sets of 5 lines. 5 for treble clef, 5 for bass clef. All 10 lines are read at once. That's why the bass and treble clef are joined by what's called a brace. That's this fancy looking thing. These are the grand staff instruments. There's probably a few more, but these are the most common ones. In my opinion, these 4 instruments take the most skill to master. They are hard on the brain and take year upon years to master. The art is in the journey. Okay, time to get out your paper and pencil again. Under the staff from the last check for understanding, draw a treble clef. Under the treble clef, write 3 instruments that read treble clef. Under the 3 treble clef instruments, draw a bass clef. Under that bass clef, write 3 instruments that read bass clef. That should say bass clef. Sorry about that. Under the 3 bass clef instruments, write 3 instruments that read grand staff. Let's go over the answers. That's an acceptable treble clef. The treble clef instruments include flute, clarinet, and trumpet, among others. There are other correct answers. This is an acceptable bass clef, and bass clef instruments include tuba, trombone, and not baboon, I was just being goofy, bassoon, and grand staff instruments are the piano, harp, marimba, and also the organ. Sometimes notes go higher or lower than what the clefs have space for. In this case, the notes use ledger lines. In order to figure out ledger lines, count forwards for higher or backwards for lower in the alphabet, like this. If I were to play every note straight up the piano, it would alternate line, space, line, space, line, space, line, space, line. It would also form the alphabet A, B, C, D, E, F. Remember, there is no H in music. It loops straight back to A. The highest note for a slogan is treble clef. Every good bird does fly. What comes after F in the alphabet? G. What comes after G? A. A has one extra line through it. This is the first ledger line. B is a space note. Pretend that this line extends through the whole staff. C has 2 ledger lines. It's a line note. And D has 2 ledger lines and it's a space note. This might take some practice to understand, and if you go lower, you have to do the alphabet backwards. Great big dogs fight animals. What's before G? F, E, D, C, B. And music can be written in both treble clef and bass clef. Take this G, for example. It is on the lower end of the treble clef, located on the space under the second ledger line. It's much simpler to notate on the bass clef, since no ledger lines are needed. Ledger lines can be very hard on the eyes. If an instrument reads a specific clef, such as trumpet, the composer might have to write the treble clef low G if he or she wants it in the music. This is an overlapping A. This A and this A are literally the same note. Okay, we've reached your last check for understanding. On the back of your paper, number 1 through 10, write the note name next to the number. I'll give you 2 minutes to do this. Starting now. One minute and 30 seconds. One minute. Thirty seconds. Okay, if you had trouble with number 1, number 5, number 6, number 8, number 9, and number 10, that's to be expected because they don't fit into any of the slogans. They don't fit into FACE, all cars eat gas, every good bird does fly, or any other slogans, I find it helpful to just practice with my flashcards and count. So if you had trouble with these, that's okay. You'll find them easier and easier the more you practice. Number 1 was C. Number 2 was C. Number 3 was B. Number 4, E. Number 5, E. Number 6, D. 7, D. 8, E. 9, G. And 10, C. For homework, do all of Unit 1 from your textbook. And feel free to message me with questions. Good luck, work hard, and see you next week.